Hello and welcome to another episode of How Good is Rugby League. My name is Michael Corbin, and in a bigger reunion than Oasis, Emmanuel's back. Emmanuel, welcome.
Michael, thank you. I took Mad Monday a week early as a South supporter. It's like I couldn't even wait for the Roosters game. I'm just like, nah.
Get out of Sydney.
I've had enough. I've seen enough. It was, I was out with COVID and then had a week off. Good to be back, though. It's nice to be back in your company. It's been a while. We've only got a few more shows left for the year. You are in insufferable form. You're in the top 4. You're sitting pretty.
I have been lovely, thank you very much, and far more subdued and demure than than I would have been if 3 of my players weren't ruled out for the season a week and a half ago.
I didn't say. All I said was you're insufferable. It's no different to normal. But
okay, well, there we go. There's some debating opinions. But...
So I've come back. There's 9 teams that are going to Bali, and everyone else is lining up. And I'm going to be honest. Every team, I think, like realistically, not every team can win, but I think there is not a clear-cut someone is going to win this premiership. There's challenges, and some teams have more challenges than others, but I don't think we've seen enough from everyone to think this is them. And maybe we're just completely underestimating the minor premiers here, who we just keep underestimating, and maybe it's just theirs for the taking. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. I completely agree that at the moment there's no real standout team. It's probably Melbourne.
Yeah.
And if you ask a lot of people with Penrith with Nathan Cleary back, Penrith are also one of those sides. But realistically, like, this competition is anyone's.
Yeah.
We have continuously disrespected the Sharks.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, we have.
Like, to do what they've done this year, they've had injuries, they've had downfalls and pitfalls at certain points, and they're a top 4 team.
Yeah.
They were, a Penrith loss away from finishing 3rd or 2nd, right? Or like a Penrith or Roosters loss from being 2nd again for the 2nd time in 3 years. Right? They finished 6th last year as well.
Yeah.
So, like, they've done under 3 years under Craig Fitzgibbon, they've made the finals all 3 years. The big knock on them is they haven't won a finals game.
Yeah.
And I said last week, I think that their idea of success this year will be winning one finals game. Because if you win one, you're in the prelims.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, it'll be interesting. And they do have the wood on Melbourne, having beaten them down there earlier this year. But there's a lot of variables, and I think big game experience really comes into it, and whether they actually have it remains to be seen. But before we get into the top 8, will we just do a quick run through the bottom 8, Mike?
Yeah.
The bottom 9. And I think we're just going to keep it really simple, and we're going to go. We spoke about maybe doing report cards. I don't even think we're going to do that. Like, it's a fail of a season, I think, to some extent, for all of them for not making it. But we're going to we will give grades, and we'll just touch on who we think their best player was through the course of the year, and whether we expect them to go up or down next year. And if we say up for everyone, it doesn't necessarily mean top 8. It could mean up one position. But yeah, okay. So running through let's go from 9th.
Yep.
The Raiders ended up in 9th spot.
Yeah, with that win over the Dragons.
This was a really good year for them, I thought, because there was a lot of expectation from them that they were going to finish last.
We both had them last.
They'd lost their star recruit, their star player, Jack Whiten.
Fogarty was out for a huge part
of the year. There was a lot of talk about Ricky getting this extension till 2029, and was that the right idea? But I think they've done really well. A lot of grit. surprised a few teams along the way, some upset wins. I just thought it was a really good year for them, and apparently their lower grades are doing exceptionally well as well. So I think really good signs for them. That they're always there or thereabouts. Last year they snuck in. They probably had a better season this year than last year in terms of for and against. But last year they snuck in. This year they didn't. But I think this is a good season for them.
Yeah, completely agree. Next year they've got a lot of young players who played recently, like the under 19 state of origin coming into their squad.
Yeah.
Including Ethan Sanders from from the Parramatta Eels and Mayer from the Newcastle Knights. So look, really good signs. They've got a guy coming over from England as well, I believe, and a lot of reps for players like KO Weeks, Ethan Strange.
Yeah.
Chevy Stewart's coming along in New South Wales Cup as well. So like, there's just a lot of young potential, and we said that like this is kind of like a rebuild year for them. So my stock is up for Raiders. I think they will be in the top 8 next year.
Yeah. In 10th place.
Quickly, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Their best player, probably my nomination would be Hudson Young.
Yeah.
I think he's been fantastic.
Yeah, no,
KO Weeks is another big shout.
Yeah.
And Elliot Whitehead leaving the club as well was just solid all year.
Yeah. Okay, 10th place for the Dolphins. Ended up on 11 wins, 13 losses, for and against of -1. Second and final season for Wayne Bennett. Dolphins jumped from 13th to 10th this year. Of course, they're in contention for that top 8 spot in the final round and edged out by Newcastle or the Bunker, depending on who you ask. I think this was a really good year for them. I think it would have been a better year if they'd snuck in, but they had some big injuries early in the season, and they had a terrible start to the year with walloping at the hands of the Dragons. And I just think that...
It was the Cowboys, wasn't it?
I think it was
Cowboys
Dragons.
beat them, and they beat Dragons 38-0.
That's right. And I just think it's sort of, that they put up a fight in pretty much every game they were in. They had a bit of a soft draw, and they were in the top 4 with that. And then I think things got a bit more challenging. The media narrative did not really want to talk about that and wanted to talk about Wayne coaching 2 clubs. But I think they did really well. My player of the year for them is just Hammer. I just think he's fantastic. He's brilliant. And then Trey Fuller, like in the last few weeks, I just thought he was really good as well.
Yeah. Like that.
And Herbie as well. So I've got a few. I like it. It's a fast, skillful backline. And I think that they will miss Wayne Bennett. I don't really know much about Christian Wolf and what he's going to bring to this side, but I have seen things go pear-shaped at Wayne Bennett coached clubs. I'm living through it right now.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing with the Dolphins, right? It's like, how can they buck the Wayne curse where he leaves a place and the team turns to garbage, or it comes to fire, or everything else that you want to name, right? So that's the big thing for me. But Isaiah Katoa, awesome this year. Another player.
It was another one.
My player for this team is Max Plath, who I think has just been awesome all year for them. Has filled a role wherever he's needed. Moved to hooker at the end of the year and was awesome. So he's my player of the year for them. They get Tom Gilbert back next year.
Yeah.
We'll see about Flegler.
Yeah.
With this nerve damage issue. But they've also got a couple of recruits coming in. Fini Fuiaki. They lose Jesse Bromwich, who's their leader. But, Hammer, Trey Fuller, Herbie. Jack Bostock was arguably one of the best rookies this year.
Yeah. Dragons Jr.
Dragons Jr. There you go. So, stock up for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and awesome. I think it's even off the field, like that rivalry with the Broncos. I think we saw really, like, that was their first win over the Broncos in the 4 games they've played, and we saw the tension in Suncorp and sort of who's going to dominate that arena. I think it's awesome for rugby league. They had, I think, the 3rd highest crowd average for the year. I like them. I like them as a club. I think it's really good, and hopefully next year they can make it to the finals.
Yep. 11th place.
11th place, Mike, was
the Dragons.
The Dragons. won 11, lost 13, for and against negative 126. Now, I think it's all perspective, right? No one expected them to even be in finals contention. They got there. They came together. They just lost so badly, so badly. Like they beat Melbourne and got pumped by Parramatta. It just that is just something that's going to have to be worked on over the off season. I think there's going to be it's obviously new blood coming to the Dragons, including Damien Cook, but they're also losing Lomax. A couple of others will go. It sounds like from what Flanagan has said. But he's a strong coach. He's always, I guess, he's always coaching a team that's in contention, right? So it's very hard to say they're going to go down under him as he puts his fingertips on this roster and gets control of it. It's just hard to see that they're going to finish lower than where they finished this year.
Yeah, I think they were quite inconsistent this year. Obviously, their wins were quite tight and their losses were huge, right? That was the big thing on them. Player of the year for them is easily Zach Lomax, and it's not even a question. He was their best by far.
Yeah, and they're losing him.
And they're losing him. But yeah, obviously Cook and Holmes coming in next year. There was talks of Reed Campbell-Carlip coming, but I think he might be heading to one of the Queensland teams. I think that they're going to be around contending for that top 8 spot again next year.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they've got the roster to do it, but Flanagan's effect has definitely taken, Flanagan's impact has definitely taken effect in this team. Apparently, coming into between the start of the season and 5 weeks in, the team had lost a collective 200 kilos. Just by training harder and getting the right so it's little things like that.
Yeah, and he's going to use those losses against Parramatta and Canberra to end the year.
Yeah.
And also, the highlights reel from during the year was so ugly at times.
Yeah.
That he will probably use that and just ram that home as a reason to be fitter, faster, stronger. Yeah, but I love some of these older Sydney clubs doing well, and I love the hype around them and the Bulldogs this year. It's just different fan bases getting in amongst it. So
Question about Ben Hunt's future, though. I'm just a little worried about that one. In 12th place, probably the biggest fail of this year, the biggest disaster club of this year is the Brisbane Broncos.
110,
last year's grand
lost
finalists.
14, for and against -70. I've seen clubs that were not expected to do as well this year cop so much more pressure than Brisbane have copped this year. It helps to have friends in high places, but if NRL 360
helps to be owned by one of the networks,
if NRL 360 spent a little less time talking about Souths, Parramatta, and the Tigers, who all deserve some criticism, and spoke about the biggest club in the game being the biggest disappointment in the game, then maybe Brisbane would be more realistic about what a disaster this year was for them.
Yeah.
Kevin Walters is now 3 from 4 missing finals. Mike and I spoke about this, I think, more off air earlier in the year, but Brisbane, we've had this conversation since we started doing this podcast, Mike, about the old boys in Brisbane, and at some time, push is going to have to come to shove about whether you really want a former player coaching the club just because it sort of appeals to the old boys club, and whether that's an acceptable balance to missing the finals every year. Is that the payoff? And are they happy being this mediocre 12th placed rump when they should be top 4 every year with the advantages they've got?
Yeah. They are obviously the richest club, in the most profitable club in the NRL for a very long time. They dominated that southeast Queensland market.
Yeah.
And still have a big market share on that area. Obviously, there's one other team there. But they're not fighting for all the Sydney, all the other Sydney clubs, for market share, right? They've got a great nursery. They've got a great catchment of young players. And for this team to be where they are, I think the worst thing Kevy ever did was say we're making the finals 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Because it just put the pressure right back on that team, a team that can't clearly handle pressure. Maybe last year was the anomaly, but they walked into this year thinking that they'd won, and other teams just punched them in the face and didn't know how to get back up from it.
Yeah,
So yeah, a disaster for them, and I actually think it gets worse.
I think so. It's going to get worse because again, unless there's some sort of acknowledgement about just how bad this was, and an actual proper conversation that actually goes somewhere about is this the right person for the job, then I seriously question this, because Adam Reynolds does not have long left in his contract, and he is probably the one that was provided the most balance to that team.
Yeah, but even this year, I don't think he's been great.
No, and I agree with that, but he's probably the hard edge that they needed to rally up some of these more egotistical younger players. But having said that, I just don't like, even Paddy Harrigan. He was very underwhelming post Origin, in my opinion.
I think he was putting in a lot of effort, but the team just nothing good was going for him. I think the biggest decision for them next year,
Yeah,
and it's a tough one because nepotism, is Blake Mosen needs to start over Billy Walters.
100%.
Will Kevy make that move? And if he doesn't, that is the first sign that he's not the coach of this team.
But we can't even have this conversation because Billy Walters drops himself from a radio program. Adam Reynolds takes the spot on the radio program, and then Gordon Tallis jumps down his throat saying that he's disloyal to the Walters family.
Yeah, well, Billy and Kevy and Gordy are best friends.
Well, how does that help you then?
It doesn't.
For me, the best player at the Broncos this year, I like Tristan Saylor.
Yeah, mine's Carrigan. It's not close. I think he was the only one who was really trying for them.
He tried, but I liked what I saw from Tristan Saylor. I think Reece Walsh was incredibly disappointing.
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever actually recovered from that knock by Suaalii.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. All right, let's move on to the Broncos. I'm sure that they'll be
up or down.
Down.
Yeah.
Down.
I'm with you. Okay, the Warriors won 9, lost 14, drew 1 with Manly, finished on -62. Disappointing year from the Warriors.
The loss of
inconsistent.
Metcalf, I think, was the biggest. Because you saw that when him and Johnson were playing together, that was the perfect Tallis combination.
Yeah.
Everything else they tried didn't quite work.
Yeah, this year it was so disappointing. Johnson retired. Of course, set up the final try in that last game, but just, I think, really disappointing how it was so obvious to so many that he ended up being the issue with that team.
Again, I think that's because of the halves pairing. I don't think that the combinations of him and Tamari Martin or him and Chanel Harris-Tavita worked. I think, but the moment you put Luke Metcalf in there, who was there all last year, they complemented each other perfectly, and it allowed Johnson to play his game. For me, I would say that they improve. They're obviously losing Sean Johnson, Adam Fanor-Blake. They're getting James Fisher-Harris. They've got a good junior base. They've got some good young guys coming through. I think Luke Metcalf is the guy. He's going to be the main playmaker on that team.
Yeah.
Man of the year for me is an easy one. I think it's already actually been announced as well as Mitch Barnett.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I think that needs to get a mention is the Warriors crowds.
Yeah, sellouts every game. It's just awesome.
And I just wish that this football team could, repay the faith almost.
Yeah. Agree. We need to play one. It'd be great to play one game of finals footy in New Zealand.
Yeah, 100%.
And have a competitive team.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's get to the dregs of the competition.
14th place, the Titans. They won 8. They lost 16. For and against of -168. Very slow start to the year. Just took forever to get moving, and then
lost their first 8.
Yeah. Had a bit of a renaissance there. Hasler started to pull the strings, and then just the wheels fell off towards the back end. Really, I think this team goes up with Des Hasler.
I think so too. I think this year's actually been disappointing for them. Quite disappointing. I think there was more expectation on them to be good, and they showed glimpses of it. But the fact that they weren't able to put it all together, obviously they'll get Tino back next year, which will help. But yeah, this team, disappointing this year, but I think that they do improve.
Yeah.
It seems like they've settled on Campbell Kenny won Brimson Centres, which is good.
Yeah.
Um,
They actually won one less game than last year, and
Yeah.
they finished in the same spot.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people were critical of the way Holbrook went out. Holbrook's done an amazing job tidying up the Roosters' attack, but I do think that Hasler, I think he should be judged on, say, another couple of years.
Yeah, we saw it. Their blueprint is the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Right? It took Serrato a year to clean out what he needed to build a culture.
Yeah.
And then you see what they've done this year.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That's the Titans blueprint. Their player of the year for me is Keanu Kinney. I thought was just fantastic.
Yeah.
Honourable mention to Aaron Clark, who I thought was also great for them.
Yep. I'm with you. Okay. 15.
And also Lofi Camperera. I think he's on 45 tries in 44 NRL games. Yeah,
Great.
Alex Johnson, watch out.
Yeah, he should be watching out for multiple reasons. 15th place, probably one of the big disappointments this year. Parramatta, they won 7, they lost 17, minus 155, sacked a coach, got a new one, obtained a big signing in Zach Lomax. Bit of a clean out happening, speculation about Gutherson, speculation about Mitchell Moses.
Well, I think Gutho's staying, Moses will stay, Dylan Brown will stay, Regan Kemp-McGillard's gone. Let's see, I think Madison's staying. But there's not real, other than Lomax, like the problem with them is their development programs have been terrible. That for a catchment that big that they had and that junior base that they have, they've squandered a lot of it. They let a lot of players go. You know, I mentioned Ethan Sanders going to the Raiders. They let go of Matt Arthur.
Yeah.
Obviously, the handling with what happened with his father wasn't good for. He wanted out of that situation. A lot of their young prospects are going other places. Blaze Talangi, for example. So, yeah, it's hard to say they're going to go down because Moses was out for so long, and when he's in this team, it's a completely different team. I'm going to say they're going to go up just because of that, but I don't think they're going to be a top 8 team.
No.
I think they're going to struggle again next year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, Mike. I'm with you.
Their player of the year, I'm going to give it to Gutho.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think he deserves it.
He's the one who,
He's the heart and soul.
week in, week out, was the one who was putting more effort than anyone else.
Yep. All right.
Here we go.
Also, 7 wins, 17 losses, 16th place, South Sydney, negative 188. Highest they got all year was 12th. Horror injury toll didn't help. But just attitude, ill discipline, sacked a coach mid-season for the first time since 2004 when they won the Wooden Spoon. Just a really disappointing year for a multitude of reasons. And you know, down years happen, but for me, I've been harping on about this. It's the way the last 18 months has just played out. It's just been a spectacular fall from grace that no one can explain, no one can take ownership of. It's really just really underwhelming. And my concern is that from what I've seen, even since Wayne signed, I'm not too thrilled with how the club handles some things. My concern is also putting your faith and hope and trust in waiting for a 75-year-old, soon to be 75-year-old, to deliver all for you.
With a 3-year time frame.
With a 3-year time frame, and I just think we seem to have just lost our way a bit in a lot of ways, and it's just been very frustrating. And I say this as a gold member of the club, that it has been very disappointing to watch this year.
Yeah, well, look, I've been along with this journey with you.
Yeah,
I've seen you struggle.
Yeah,
it's given me a little bit of enjoyment.
No,
but it's not fun to see it. I've had a Wooden Spoon team, right?
Yeah,
it sucks.
Yeah, and like
everything that's going on, even front office.
Yeah,
like the stuff that's going on between, obviously, like there's a huge feud between Blake Solly and Andrew Abdo.
Yeah,
that's not a good place for your club to be.
No, of course not. And you know, the concern I have with this is that like Mike, we have a couple of mates that are all South supporters, and we talk about it a lot. When I was like very formative years of my life. Our team was terrible. Then our team didn't exist. Then our team existed as the basket case at the bottom of the ladder that came last or second last regularly. Okay, and for me, it is the suddenness with which that all seemed to come back this year, and that success has 1,000 parents and failure is an orphan, and no one wanted to take ownership of this, and the coach was the scapegoat, and the players that we heard 12 months ago, 15 months ago from Sam Burgess were problematic, still seem to be causing problems and still seem to be getting away with it. And that is something that just desperately needs to be sorted out, because it is becoming a huge issue for our club if the CEO of the club and the CEO of the game, if, as the rumours suggest, are falling out and having power plays over the treatment of these players.
Yeah.
My best player for this year is probably Jai Gray, just because he just tried his heart out like so many senior players in that team should have. I just think he's up there with probably the one I back the most. And Tom Burgess, who played pretty much every game this year, finishes his career as the second highest capped Rabbitoh with 249 games, and will be so missed, I think, because he seemed to be the only player that could actually move forward.
My player was Keon. I thought Keon, especially when he was playing lock, was fantastic. Tom Burgess, you mentioned, the first time since 2010 that there won't be a Burgess on South Sydney's team.
Yeah.
So, end of a generation.
Mm-hmm.
And let's finish off with the 3-time wooden spooners, the West Tigers. Only ways up. We said that 2 years ago. We said that 3 years ago. Somehow last year they went down. I think they get better. I think they showed signs, and they're shining light. And their best player this year, unquestionably, is Lachlan Galvin. The fact that he can't win Rookie of the Year is a travesty. Whoever wins the Rookie of the Year competition award this year
should just hand it over.
Should just honestly know that it's
what
not
is
theirs.
The rule?
Suspension for 2 games, and you are ineligible. And this was back when it was impossible to get suspended. Now everyone gets suspended for sneezing on players, and not on their own team, but on the Penrith Panthers. What they've seen out of Jerome Luai this year must give them so much hope.
Yeah.
So, look, I think they're up. For me, Jerome Luai coming in of his side, Lachlan Galvin's improvement, continued improvement. He's 19 years old.
Yeah.
He had a tackle efficiency of 93% this year, which is nuts. He was their best player by far, and this team. Improvement for me. Let's leave this season and this 3-year period behind.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for the Tigers this year, because it was an ugly year, but they won more games. Like they went from 4 wins to 6 wins. Okay, it's still a young team. It was a new coach. He copped so much undue pressure, and this again, there was so much crap on him, on Benji Marshall, who should not have had any expectation on him. He's a rookie coach, coaching a wooden spoon side full of rump players, really, that he was thrust into that position, but he was the target of so much while Brisbane languished. And I just think it's, it's a bit of, what do you expect from him? What do you expect? He's not Trent Robinson. He's not Michael Maguire. He's not Craig Bellamy.
Not yet.
He's not, but he's not going to have that first year success. He's not walking into a well-placed roster. He's not building a club from scratch. He was a great player for multiple clubs and a great international, but his coaching experience was 1 season next to Tim Sheens and possibly having an on-field coaching role in his final year of Souths. And this undue pressure on him was so unfair. I think they've done well. I think considering they had all this, they had Richo come in over the course of the off-season. He also copped a lot of shit at the start of the year too. There was all this innuendo around him. Then they've had all the off-field crap, and I think just give them a bit of time to sort it out. They can't be expected to come a top 8 team overnight with a 19-year-old rookie.
No. Let's leave the Tigers. Let's leave the bottom 9. We've all said it. We've all done it.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the
Let's
next
move
season
on.
for them. But for 8 teams, there's still possibly 4 more weeks left.
Yes.
And we open up on. Do we want to just go through right now the matches?
Yeah,
Just
let's
talk
do
about
it.
them.
Let's do it. So Friday night, the defending premiers in second place, the Panthers host third place Roosters. For Penrith, Nathan Cleary returns after 3 games out. Luai moves back to 5/8. Schneider drops to the reserves, and Matty Eisenhuth is the 18th man. For the Roosters, Dom Young and Tupou are back on deck. Lindsay Collins and Nat Butcher also return. Terrell May and White go back to the bench, and Va'a and Blake Steep make way. Former Wallaby Marky Mark also goes to the reserves after impressing on debut last week against the Bunnies. Michael Ashley Klein has been appointed for this game.
Yeah. As so many people on Twitter have mentioned, the Roosters and Panthers have drawn the short straw. This is the NRL's number one whistleblower, right? He's their number one ref, and yet every single person in the public eye thinks that he's now the worst ref.
I did see the Roosters have 4 from 5 record under him this year, though.
Yeah, I don't. Whatever.
And
that's
Penrith
fine.
1 from 2.
Interesting.
Which means he's refereeing a lot of not big games.
Yeah, but he's done Origins and whatnot. Some stats from this one. It's been 10 years of this current system where 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and the bottom 8 versus each other, the 5, 8 and 6, 7. Of those 10 games, it looks like
10 or 12. I think it's 12.
Is it 12?
This is the 13.
Is it 13?
Yeah.
Sorry, it is 12.
Yeah.
9 wins for second place.
Yeah.
3 wins for third place.
Yeah.
So second normally wins. Same for first versus fourth.
Yeah. I can tell you that 2 of those 3 wins for third place were Souths in 2014 and 2021.
There you go. I actually think Penrith will win this one.
Yeah.
I like what I saw out of the Sandon-Smith combination with Satili Tupanua, which they've kept. That moved Nat Butcher lock, which I think is a smart move.
Yeah.
I think that Nfahu White has been good there at 13 this year, but just in finals, I don't think he has the legs to continue playing that role, especially when you've got Watson having to play 9. Just last week, I loved what I saw out of Nwanga Ntawaze.
Yeah.
I know that you didn't try and say the name.
No. No, I'm not going to do that. I can't pronounce it properly.
Okay.
I haven't learnt it, and I don't want to sound like Blocker Roach.
Fair enough.
And I do need to learn that.
But yeah, I thought he was fantastic. That first high ball was great. Good signs for next year. But Tupu, Dom Young coming back in will help. Yeah, it's just going to be interesting. I think it'll be a close game.
Yeah.
And I haven't been convinced by Penrith's performances, but it's whether they can just turn it on. That's the thing. Are they too tired? Dylan Edwards, I mentioned last week, he looks so banged up. Nathan Cleary, we don't know whether he's 100%. But one person who is, I think, looks 100%, probably isn't, is Isaiah Eo, who's just been so good all year. But yeah, I do think Penrith get the Roosters in this one, and the media will jump on the Roosters for not being able to beat one of Melbourne or Storm or Panthers again.
Yeah. Look, it's hard not to tip Penrith, but I think there's a lot more expectation that they win than is probably warranted, given what we've seen out of them. Even before Nathan got injured, they had a close win over Para. Dolphins pushed them to...
Really close win over close win over the Dolphins.
That Melbourne beat them. Canberra beat them. As I said at the start, the jury is still out. It's Penrith and Melbourne purely because they're in the box seat to do it, right? Mike, I hate to sort of bring it up again, but if the Roosters didn't have those injuries in that game a couple of weeks ago, I'd probably put more
pressure.
I'd probably think they're probably a greater chance of winning. But
there's a higher expectation on them.
Having said that, I still maintain what I said a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, where I do think this year has a 2021 feel about it. And I do think that the Roosters have attacked like no one else, which is very similar to Souths in 2021. Defense wasn't as good as the other two, but given the skill and the talent and the belief in that team, I do think that there is a potential for the Roosters to flip the switch and end up with Penrith and Melbourne on the same side of the draw.
Okay.
So I'm tipping Penrith, but I really won't be
Yeah, look,
surprised.
I like obviously, yeah, as I mentioned, I think that there's a lot more pressure on Penrith now given the Roosters' injuries.
Yeah,
It's Penrith's game to lose, right?
yeah,
But I think this will be a really close, tight game. I think the morale around the Roosters camp, everything I've heard is that it's fantastic.
yeah,
You know, the Sand Smith has been really good for us this year when he's played and
Yeah.
has been destroying New South Wales Cup. He's the future. There was no question that when Sam went down, he was the one who was coming in.
yeah,
It took him a bit of time to find his feet against South Sydney, but when he did, he looked a lot better. But we saw what our attack was like without Sam Walker last year.
mm,
We kind of saw it against the Raiders when he went down.
yeah,
That's the problem. Is we've had this amazing attack all year,
yeah,
but a lot of that was because it was Sam Walker's
yeah,
team.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the concern for me.
Yeah, and I think that's where it becomes a bit of an issue because that attack kind of covers for the fact that your defense is probably not as good as the
No,
other
it's not as
two.
good as Penrith or
Yeah, yeah.
It's not. It's marginally worse than Melbourne. It's not
Yeah.
much, but Penrith are definitely a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
defensive team.
Yeah.
All right. Saturday
Saturday afternoon,
4
4 o'clock, Olympic Park. Sorry, Amy Park. Storm hosting Cronulla. So Pap is back. Christian Welch is also expected. Is also returning. Farlongo suffered a hamstring injury while deputising for Pap and could miss a couple of weeks. Grant Anderson is 18th man, and for the Sharks, Oregon Kaufusi returns after being rested from the Manly game. Royce Hunt goes back to the bench and fills the void left by Tommy Hazelton. Hazelton's been included in the extended squad and will be monitored. Melbourne finals, Amy Park, they're favourites for me, but the Sharks won down here.
They're like dominant. 9.5 point start at the moment. I think they've got on Sportsbet.
Yeah.
Which is like I think that's disrespectful. And I mentioned it's disrespectful to Cronulla, who've been good all year.
It's the spine, though, isn't it? Like, you're just looking at this spine, and it's Pappenhausen, Munster, Hughes, Grant, all big game players against Kennedy, Trindle, Hines, and Brayley. Like, it's the same as the other game. The pressure... Sorry, I've spoken so much tonight. The pressure is... I haven't shut up. The pressure is completely on, right? It is on, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cronulla has one of those very Cronulla-like performances where they just defend like their life depends on it. One of those clubs that can just do it sometimes.
Yeah, it would not surprise. I'm going to tip Melbourne because it's in Melbourne, but it would not
if it's
surprise me at all.
8-6 Cronulla, I wouldn't be surprised. But if it's 48-6 Melbourne, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I could see that. I think Melbourne did. Both teams actually coming off good wins. Like Melbourne had that dominant win against the Broncos. The Sharks in a game that meant nothing to them. They didn't need to win it to move up. They couldn't move up. They couldn't move down, and they went out and they absolutely pumped Manly.
Yeah, and I think that's like from both of them, it's a good mindset because Cronulla have a notoriously bad record against Manly, especially at Brookie, where I think they win 1 of 4 or 5.
Yeah, so Storm for me, but this again another really good game. I think this is the game of the round, if you ask me.
Yeah,
I think big upset potential.
Yeah. Okay, Saturday night, Cowboys Knights. This game is being played to avoid the North Queensland September heat. Jordan McLean.
It's also being played at this time so that there wasn't a Sydney game
while the Giants
are playing out next door.
Yeah, despite the fact the Giant Stadium fits 20,000, they're going to be 50,000 Bulldogs.
Yeah, but it's just 70,000 people in one area.
Yeah.
It's not smart.
Okay, so Jordan McLean returns after missing the Bulldogs game with a hamstring injury. So Sam McIntyre reverts to the bench. Thomas McKaylee is the man to drop off the bench, and Jackson Purdue has been named 18th man. Newcastle take an unchanged 17 to Townsville, and Kai Pearce-Paul is in the extended squad as he looks to return after a leg laceration. Newcastle done it. I had them making the finals. I had them third. but that they've snuck in there. This is going to be a bit of a challenge for them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's giving them a shot in hell. I mentioned those stats before. They're actually so the last place team, so eighth has won only 2 games and lost 10.
Yeah.
I think one of those teams was the Cowboys.
Yep.
And I think the other one was the Warriors, 2011. Yeah, I'm gonna tip the Cowboys in this one at home. I think that it's the first time they've ever played each other in the finals. These two teams, I believe. But Cowboys for me are the far stronger team, and they keep on finding ways to win. They've had some really good wins the last couple of weeks as well. So that attack, I think, is going to be too dominant for the Newcastle Knights, who have actually been good in defence.
Yeah.
But their attack has struggled. I don't think they can keep up for points.
Yeah, I just feel like Todd Payton will have a game plan to kind of keep Ponga out of it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, the Sunday game, the big Sydney clash, Bulldogs and Manly, two teams that really don't like each other. Addo Carr, we won't go into it, but he's stood himself down for this week. Bronson Xerri, Burton, and Skelton are all back on deck in a triple backline boost. Jacob Carraz slides back to the wing after playing centre last week, and Blake Tarp is 18th man. For Manly, Tommy Turbo's back, Cooler reverts to the centres, and Tommy Talau back to the wing. Faulalo goes to 18th man. Sipley and Waddell are among the reserves, along with backup hooker Gordon Chan Pung Tong. Okay, this is a very interesting game. So you have big game players for Manly, right? A premiership winning halfback, but you've got probably a huge contingent of Bulldogs fans that are just going to be willing their team on. The Bulldogs have been disappointing even before the disruptions this week, the last couple of weeks. They have had travelled a lot. They've had Burton out, but I think
Burton, Crichton, like they're big travel schedule. Burton, Crichton, they've made the 8. Maybe they just and this happens a lot where teams ramp up their intensity during trainings, and it just gets them during the week. But then when it comes to finals time, their bodies are like perfectly tuned for it and ready. Maybe that's what happens. And look, if any coach knows how to do that other than Ivan Cleary and Trent Robinson and Craig Bellamy, it's probably Cam Serraldo, who spent so many years under Ivan Cleary.
Yeah.
To be fair,
they only played 2 weeks ago, and Manly obliterated them.
Yeah, no Crichton in that game.
No Crichton in that game, but
this is the thing, right? If Tom is 100%, and that's the key. If Turbo is 100%, I think Manly win this.
Yeah.
I think that Manly get it done. I think that the Bulldogs have done really well to get where they are, but I do think they've probably they haven't got any more gears left. They've kind of used them all up, and they're just out of steam. And this will be a good experience for them.
Yeah.
To build upon, but I just think that it's probably a year too early for them.
I agree. I don't want to think that, but I look at a team with Cherry Evans there. Anyway, he was underwhelming in Origin, so who knows? Who knows? But I just think it's interesting. I'm actually excited both of these two teams are playing finals.
Yeah, it's good. Back to 80s rivalry.
Yeah, 80s, 90s. Yeah. Even the 2011, 2012, they had really good rivalry when Hasler left. So Michael's tips for this week. He's gone Panthers over the Roosters, Storm over Cronulla, Cowboys to beat Newcastle, and Manly over the Dogs.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. So that means the week after we'll get Roosters versus Manly and Sharks versus Cowboys, who are very familiar with each other.
Both games at Allianz that week? I think
probably.
So. Yeah, because Sharks played Souths in week 2 at Allianz a couple of years ago.
Probably, yeah. Maybe they split them up and they send Sharks out to ANZ, but I don't see why they would do that.
No.
All Sydney grand final, all Sydney week, which would be nice. excited. I love finals footy. It's
Yeah.
great. All
Me
games
too.
on 9. I'll be sitting down on the couch and watching them all. Might even actually go out to the Bulldog Manly game. Just I want the crowd.
Yeah, it'd be a good atmosphere.
Yeah,
They turn up.
yeah. So yeah, really excited. We've covered a lot today.
We have.
Long podcast. Had to get through a fair bit. You've been missing, so
It's almost like you missed me.
yeah, it's just a lot. I missed a lot while I was going on my lonesome, just trying to cover everything with my notes in front of me. But you miss stuff when there's not someone to question you. So it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
It's the only compliment you ever received from me. And
It's true.
he's nodding. And yeah, we'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there. How good is rugby league, Mike?
How good is rugby league? Thanks, guys.